kind of unprecedented capex number, I don't know how many in the audience will know, and I was checking, it's larger than the GDP of Kenya and double that of Myanmar. The question everyone is asking, in the last 3 years, the Modi government has gone full hog ahead on capex. What is the philosophy behind it?
Good afternoon, Siddharth, and really good to be on your show. And thank you for your kind words. Capital expenditure is really sort of the secret sauce for growth. Because what happens is that when you're investing in infrastructure like in railways, in airports, in highways, in other aspects like metro lines, all of these not only result in growth right away, because what happens is you obviously employ people when you're building a railway line, you buy cement, you buy steel, you get a construction company to do that. So you definitely stimulate growth even as you're building a railway line or you're building a national highway. But what happens is then you're putting an asset in the ground that's going to make you more productive and more efficient for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And that's where the huge multiplier effect of capital expenditure comes in, and people have estimated that the multiplier effect of infrastructure totally is 2.5x, which means a rupee spent on a road will give you a return of 2.5 times the money that you've put in. And that naturally results in growth in that year in which you're constructing, but it also helps you create growth in future years and growth that ripples through the economy. So it really is the secret sauce. It really drives growth. Certain aspects of infrastructure are even better. So for example, having been associated with the aviation system, people have found that if you invest in airports, airports have an economic multiplier of 6x. So you build an airport, you drive growth 6 times as a result of that, because not only then do you drive, obviously, usage in that particular year, you create more tourism, you create better logistics, you improve efficiency, and so on. So by really making this very bold and very dramatic bet on capital expenditure, on infrastructure, we have been able to sustain our growth. And right now, the growth that we have in India is absolutely the pride of our country and is being hailed everywhere in the world.
That's a very good point. And if we were to add on what the states are going to spend, the loan that are provided to the states, State Bank of India, Soumyakanti Ghosh was earlier on the panel, Mr. Sinha, and he told us that if you added up everything, including PSU spending, you actually have 19 lakh crore plus. Now that is a massive number. And roadways alone has gone up. The transportation segment, including railways, the allocation has gone up 56%. The question to you, sir, is while the double R, roads and railways, has gone up by 56%, rural development is 4%. Agriculture is just 0.7%. Health and urban development are just marginal increases. The question a lot of people are asking, you are putting money in roads and railways, why are you not putting money in health or agriculture for our 400 million farming dependent people?
Yes, Siddharth, that actually is a very poor analysis, and let me correct the numbers that you have. Sure. First of all, when it comes to the rural economy, rural infrastructure is being built up very, very quickly. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, which I can tell you about from my own constituency in Hazaribagh, is being rapidly accelerated, and we are spending a lot of money on Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. A lot of the highways are going through the rural sector. There's tremendous money being spent on Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, that's gone up 33% to 80,000 crores. Jal Jeevan Mission has also got a 30% increase. That also is largely happening in rural areas as well, because that's where we don't have clean drinking water. That's going into rural areas as well. So we are doing a lot for the agricultural economy. Rural infrastructure is being built up very strongly. And remember that there was an announcement of 1 lakh crores for agriculture infrastructure fund a couple of budgets ago. You may remember that. That money is being spent right now, and that is absolutely being used to make cold storage facilities in rural areas. It's being used to improve irrigation schemes. All of these are getting the benefit of tremendous infrastructure spending as well. And when it comes to health and when it comes to education, people are saying that we are not putting enough money there. That also is not correct, because the reality is that there it is largely the states which collectively account for more money spent than the central government. The states are spending massively on education and health, which constitutionally is their subject as well. And in addition to that, we have other sources through the 15th Finance Commission for urban local bodies, where again they're spending there for health facilities and so on. And then finally, for a place like Jharkhand, where we have lots of mining, we get royalties from mining. I can tell you in Hazaribagh and in Ramgarh, my own two districts, we are getting 300 crores a year. 300 crores a year from mining royalties, and these are being used largely for upgrading our Anganwadi Kendras, for upgrading our schools, and really improving our health facilities. So if you look at the sum total of government spending through all the different sources, you'll find that not only are we spending massively on infrastructure, which is roads and railways, as you mentioned, but also on health facilities, on educational facilities, and so on. So across the board in the economy, our infrastructure, our facilities, our basic services are being strengthened and improved dramatically.
I'm glad you gave us that perspective by adding on so many other expenditures that are being. There is very clearly 100% acknowledgement that there is no short-term populism. And given that is pre-election year, I'm guessing it must have been a tough call. The point I'm asking you is, what are your own hopes about private sector investment rising on the back of this massive capex push? A lot of this money is going to be executed in the hands of private contractors. What's your own sense, Mr. Sinha?
Siddharth, before I come to the question of private sector capex, let me explain to you this question of election spending. The Honorable Prime Minister has to be commended for his visionary and wise thinking in these matters. Remember, he's been the Chief Minister of Gujarat and won election after election there. And it is remarkable. I'm just coming from Surat. I was in Surat yesterday. It's remarkable the development that has happened in Gujarat and the popularity, the long-term popularity that has ensued as a result of these visionary longer-term policies. And for the Bharatiya Janata Party under Honorable Prime Minister's leadership to win a 7th successive election in Gujarat, a 7th successive election, and to have been in power for 27 years, and this election was won with the BJP getting 156 seats, which is 85%. 85% of all of the seats is remarkable, and it demonstrates that it is not election gimmicks. जो रेवड़ी वाली जो बात माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने की, वो रेवड़ी का तो आप छोड़ ही दीजिए मामला. अगर आप दूरदर्शी विजनरी अगर आपकी सोच हो, लॉन्ग टर्म अगर आप सोचें, तो जो आपको सस्ती लोकप्रियता नहीं, नॉट चीप पॉपुलैरिटी, but genuine long-term enduring popularity you will get if you follow good policies. I think that's what the Honorable Prime Minister has shown us in Gujarat, and that is precisely what we are following in the national level as well. And that is why I think we'll keep winning election after election, because it's not election gimmicks, but long-term visionary pragmatic policies that deliver results on the ground, that result in true long-term popularity. And that is effectively what we've done. I've said this in Parliament on many occasions as well, Siddharth. Now, let's come to private sector capex. Now, if you studied the economic survey, Siddharth, you'll have seen that there is a clear upswing in private sector capex. Private sector capex is beginning to improve. And that, of course, is very natural, because we are coming out of COVID, where capacity utilization had come down, demand had come down, and now capacity utilization in our factories and in our private sector facilities is now inching up to 70-75%. And this is the point at which people start to invest. By keeping inflation under control, keeping real rates under control, we made it very attractive for the private sector to invest in infrastructure and in their productive facilities. And that's why, with growth being sustained, with the macroeconomic stability that we have, and India continued to being seen as a shining star globally, we are likely to see, along with the very significant capital expenditure that the government is incurring, we are likely to see very strong private sector capex as well.
Mr. Sinha, since we are talking about growth, what's your own sense? Earlier today, a question was asked, when will India sort of aspire for double-digit growth? We don't hear a mention of that, and I'm not pinning you down on that, but your own reading of the growth dynamics at least playing out till 2025.
My own sense is that we are in a neutral global environment, or in a negative global environment on a domestic basis, completely capable of growing 6 to 7% a year, and have been growing at that rate. We are estimating 6.5% next year, when next year the view is that the global economy will hit a recession or be very close to a recession. So with the global economy in a recessionary type of environment, for us to be able to do 6.5% growth is absolutely remarkable. And that is why India is seen as a shining star globally, because of our strong domestic growth. And of course, the capex and the consumption story that is unfolding in India domestically is sustaining that growth. Now, if the global economy does well and our export engine fires on that, and we have bullish sentiment in the capital markets and stronger investments as a result of that, it's highly likely that we will be able to grow beyond 6.5% and get to that 8 to 9% growth that we would all like to see for India. But that does depend on global conditions as well. I think there is an impact of those conditions on our growth. With that in neutral or negative territory, which is what next year is expected to be, we can still grow at 6.5%. If that turns around, we could easily grow at 8 or 9% as well.
As I wind down this conversation, one broader question to you, because you understand the masses, you are an elected politician. Is it the government's intent to withdraw all exemptions that the middle class enjoys? That is one of the responses we have heard for the new tax regime.
We want to make sure that we have a fair and transparent tax regime that is something that will result in better compliance and more people coming into the tax net. So we want better compliance, we want fairness, we want transparency. And if you look at the new tax regime is absolutely taking you in that direction. And in fact, if your exemptions are modest, you also are able to save quite a bit of money in the new tax regime. And that's what makes it fair, transparent, and easy to comply with.
Is it fair, given the kind of lower headline rate that corporate India enjoys versus the middle class?
You have to look at it from the point of view of what the global tax environment is. The global tax environment for corporations that are quite mobile in terms of their businesses is in that 25% range. So 25% is about where corporate taxes are around the world, and we are very much consistent with that as well. When you look at individual tax rates around the world, whether you look at China, you look at the US, you look at Germany, you look at the UK, our tax rates are very consistent with individual income tax rates in those countries. So from a global perspective, tax rates are very fair, very much aligned with global benchmarks.
All right, Mr. Sinha, thank you very much for that short but effective explanation of certain questions that have been lingering in the air. Thank you very much for your time with us today.
Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. Thank you, Siddharth. And Siddharth, do stay on with us as well. To continue that conversation, we would like to invite to join us Nitin Gupta, Chairman, Central Board of Direct Taxes, to really further this discussion on the long and short of taxation in conversation with Siddharth Zarabi.
Thank you very much, Abha. And once again, a very warm afternoon. It's a bit warm, thankfully, after days of cold. And Mr. Nitin Gupta is here, the chairman of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. When we were planning the session, and prior to this, when we had invited him here, we had hoped that his counterpart from the indirect tax side would also be there. But since it's only Mr. Gupta, we are calling this session the long and short of taxation. Mr. Gupta, lots of questions that you must have answered in the last 5 days, and I'm going to start with the big one. Why are you confident that the new tax regime will be a game changer?
Very valid question, and the contours of the proposed tax regime are before everyone. You will agree that lot of changes have been made. The slabs have been widened, the number of slabs have been reduced, the surcharge for the rich and super rich has been moderated. So lot of changes are there, in spite of the fact that it is deduction and exemption free. There is something which will remain with the taxpayers in terms of the amount of tax saved, in terms of the decision making which they can make for the investment in case they like to make. So the choice is left with the taxpayer to decide what way he wants to do, and therefore we believe that it would be a game changer. As you all know, the scheme is there from 2020, but it could not take that wings which it should have taken, and we believe that with the proposed changes, it is going to take wings and it will move forward in a very fast way.
Sir, one of the questions that is being asked, and perhaps you have answered this, is that this is government very slowly and quietly moving towards doing away with all exemptions. Government does not want to pay too much interest on small saving schemes. Therefore, you are encouraging people to save less, spend more, and pay extra tax.
It's not strictly speaking the way it is being projected. As a taxpayer, even if one chooses to be in the proposed regime, he is free to make a contribution towards savings or anything. So that's not the case. See, we are looking at from the taxation perspective, and apart from being simplistic, where you need not maintain any documentation, you can file the return of income in a very simplistic manner without the help of a professional. All these are pluses. And from the tax administration perspective, let me say, what we are coming across is certain people are misutilizing the trust which we have reposed in them by claiming wrongful deductions and exemptions. So probably that thing would also be a thing of the past, only because of certain people who, I think, shift the taxpayers, change their mind to utilize unavailable deductions and exemptions. That will become a thing of the past as well. And the administration of tax, administration of the return would be simpler for us as well.
What is the percentage, if you can share with us, Mr. Gupta, of such people who, as you said, are claiming wrongful exemptions?
It's very difficult to define in terms of percentage, but even a single person, if it is utilizing, if he is utilizing it wrongfully, is not good. We mounted certain actions in political parties, and what we found that it is very rampant to claim deduction of the contribution made to the political party, and claiming it, the money has been paid back to the person who donated the money, who contributed to the political party, and then, so it is limited to not all political parties, it is limited to certain very with low profile. So that is there, these are unregistered as well. Apart from that, what we have noticed is that certain organizations where a particular tax professional induces the salaried employees to claim wrongful deductions, and what we have observed that these deductions are claimed up to the hilt. That means to say, if the ATC deduction is there, it is up to 1.5 lakh, then ATD up to 1 lakh or 50,000, something like that, which is not possible looking to the income profile of that person. So it's that sort of thing are happening. We have come across these things and we are taking corrective actions. But suffice to say that even if these are small in numbers as compared to the overall taxpayer base, it is not appropriate. And these people, these salaried employees who have taken it wrongfully, are liable for prosecution, and they get.
What action has been taken against those, as you put it, small political parties which might just be sort of fronts for certain kinds of activities?
As I said, we mounted action, and then we take whatever is required to be taken in terms of putting them to the prosecution, taxation, and cancellation of their registration, etc. So these are taken in terms of what has been provided under the statute.
Okay. Let's come to another question, and this is to do with the fact that there are certain people in the insurance industry who are saying that there will be a negative impact on the insurance sector because of some of these proposals in the finance bill. What would you say to them?
Let me clarify 2 points. The first is that with the proposed regime, it is up to the taxpayer, as I have told you, that it is up to the taxpayer to decide which type of policy he or she wants to have, whether term or endowment or any other policy. So it is left to the choice of the taxpayer. So exactly, it is not going to, it may have some impact on the insurance sector, but not to that extent. Secondly, the proposed change of limiting the tax benefit up to rupees 5 lakh of the annual premium paid by the taxpayer is not restrictive, in the sense that insurance company can still float a policy where the annual premium is of 10 lakh rupees or anything, but the tax benefit will not be available. So that is the only point which is there. And one more point which comes to my thought is that probably it is going to make the sector more competitive. Probably the insurance companies will come out with better products. They will be more efficient in terms of providing returns to the person who is taking a policy. So I think it is going to be a better terrain, better area henceforth.
So what you are also saying, Mr. Gupta, is that insurance products should be for the specific purpose to insure against certain eventualities and not for tax shopping, really.
Definitely.
Okay. Let me also ask you about your own sense, and you briefly touched upon it. What is the net benefit that taxpayers can expect if they switch to the new regime? Obviously, there are various income profiles. Can you give us the broadest sense of who benefits the most and to what extent?
Now, every section of the taxpayer benefits, number one. Number two is the person who is the lowest rung, earlier up to 5 lakh, now up to 7 lakh in the proposed regime, is not required to pay any tax. If he is salaried employee, it becomes 7 lakh 50,000. So a person earning 7 lakh 50,000 per annum without any deduction, without any exemption, will not be required to pay any tax. Now coming from 7 lakh or 7.5 lakh to 15 lakh, at 15 lakh, our calculation shows that in the proposed tax regime, the tax payable would be 1 lakh 50,000. So effective tax rate works out to 10%. Okay. But if there is a taxpayer who, with the income of 18 lakh 75,000, with a deduction exemption of 3 lakh 75,000 in the old regime, net income becomes 15 lakh, will also be paying tax of 1 lakh 50,000 in the old regime. That means to say 18 lakh 75,000 income, deduction of 3 lakh 75,000
plus exemption.
Of deduction exemption put together is at the same level as income of 15 lakh in the new regime. If a person has lesser deduction and exemption aggregating to 3 lakh 75,000, the new regime, the proposed regime, would be beneficial to the taxpayer. Now the issue is, at the income level of 15 lakh or 18 lakh 75,000, what could be the quantum of deduction or exemption one can enjoy, because one requires money for expenditure, for his own utilization and all that. So it is our perception that it's quite decent amount, which is we have thought about making it an inflection point. So 3 lakh 75,000, if a 18 lakh 75,000 is putting to exemption and deductions, is at the same level as the new regime, I believe many people who are claiming less than this would be better off in the new regime. Okay. And that will be the position in the income level higher than this. Above 5 crore, obviously surcharge will make a lot of difference and they will be benefited.
One question about the way the new tax slabs are proposed to be said, and it is my understanding when I looked at it, for 12 to 15 lakh taxable income, the rate is 20%. And the moment you cross 15, you go straight away to 30. Shouldn't it have been 25% if you were following a graded 5 to 10 to 15 to 20? Why this sudden jump from 20 to 30? The point that someone said that you are perhaps targeting those who are what you see as the creamy layer, really?
We could, our calculations could lead to this thing. It could have been done that way, what you are proposing, what you are suggesting. So it's a call to be taken. See, budget exercise is very uh, time oriented. There is a timelines involved. There is a lot of work to be done. It's really, I'm saying, our team is working overnight, at times 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Even I left office at 12:30 in the night. So it's a very rigorous.
There is no argument against this, and people like me who have covered the finance ministry know that if the midnight oil is burnt in Bharat Sarkar, 3 months before budget, North Block burns a lot of oil. But sir, I will persist with that question, and you must allow me this. For corporate sector 25%, मैं आम आदमी हूँ, मैं क्यों 30% दूँ? मैंने क्या खता की है? I am complying with everything. I am paying indirect tax on every single transaction that I undertake. But आप मेरे को निचोड़ रहे हैं. 5% आप कम से कम मेरी पैरिटी रखवाते ना कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर के साथ. उनको तो आपने 2019 में माला माल कर दिया, आम आदमी को छोड़ दिया.
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. It's not the case that what Siddharth is suggesting, but we will definitely keep it in mind, and maybe if it will be deliberated or discussed as well, we will keep it in mind. Everything cannot happen in one go. Probably it may happen in future as well. So
I'm glad you are hinting at that, and I will just say this with your permission, that just like you gave a mid-course corporate tax cut, maybe you might decide to do that in this September or whenever you choose to do that, but definitely you have given us a headline that you will take a look at it. Let's now come to another aspect of this new tax regime, which is the benefit for employers and how much compliance systems, filing. Every year we have to give 5 proofs. There is a whole department in companies which is, they are busy with tax compliance. Will Indian employers also benefit in some way with the new tax regime? And more importantly, sir, for all our viewers and audience here, what would you tell corporate India with regard to incentivizing their employees or pushing their employees towards the new regime?
You have rightly, succinctly pointed out that it is going to be beneficial for any deductor, means employer, because of the lesser paperwork needed in terms of the verification of claims and all that. So definitely it is a beneficial for the tax deductor, the employer. And but I personally feel that it's up to the taxpayer to choose which regime it would like to have. So probably the employer can just put forth the benefits of the new regime, the proposed regime, before the employee, and it is up to him to take a call onto that, what way he or she likes to choose.
Sir, by when will you make the new regime mandatory?
I think Honorable FM has already indicated that it would be work in progress anyway, and as of now we have not touched the old regime. The benefits are percolating to the new regime, so it shows a policy shift in the mind of the policy makers, that the time will be for the new regime only.
Okay. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and Revenue Secretary, Finance Secretary, and other finance secretaries and the budget makers like Mr. Nitin Gupta are here with us through the day. Mr. Gupta, one more broader point, and this is to do with the expectation in the run-up to the budget that you will also use this opportunity to, if not actually do it, but indicate a reform roadmap for ending the sort of gaps between long-term and short-term capital gains taxation. How much were you able to work on that, and why did it not come through in this budget?
Capital gain is a very complex, really complex exercise in terms of the asset classes, in terms of the holding periods, what we have done over a period of time, over last 60 years, adding one or more layer. There are different treatments for residents, non-residents. Then we have indexation, without indexation. So then it affects whole lot of people. We believe that it's such a ticklish exercise that we initiated that, not that we did not discuss it, we did not deliberate upon it. It was discussed, it was deliberated upon. But up to the last contours, in that limited time frame, it's not possible to find a common ground. And therefore, it's a, again, work in progress where we would revert back and take a call.
Sir, is there a possibility of a public discussion paper? The department has been encouraging public feedback before certain policies and decisions are finalized.
See, there were a lot of communications, lot of representations on this issue as well from the different chambers and associations, and these are already there. So if new suggestions are there, if there are any representations, that we will also consider, as we consider for any change, any amendment or proposal.
Okay. Sir, I have one more question, again from a different perspective, but on the new tax regime. It used to be, many years back, EET in terms of taxation. Has it now shifted to TEE, tax exempt exempt?
See, the choice is with the taxpayer, as I have said. You have rightly put it. Though no, this way we have not thought about, but it is really so now. So one can take like that.
Okay. The broader question that a lot of people may want to understand from you is your own reading of the buoyancy in tax collections. We have seen several major steps and decisions over the last 6-7 years, which have led to greater formalization of the economy, much better tax compliance and tax collections, direct tax collections as well as indirect. In terms of direct tax collections, which is your ambit, how do you see the revenue outlook going ahead in terms of compliance and ensuring that more and more people come under the tax net?
Tax buoyancy has been really good, barring for the COVID period when everything was topsy-turvy, but overall revenue buoyancy is good, particularly in the current financial year, where we are growing at 24% and net 18%, in spite of higher refund outgo, which has been appreciated by the taxpayer community as a whole. And we think that we can continue with that, getting better trust from the taxpayers. Having said that, the buoyancy for the remaining part of the current financial year is likely to be good. Looking to the way businesses are moving, the quarterly results are witnessed because quarterly results are being seen now.
Yes.
And the advanced tax which we have already seen. So we believe that remaining 2 months, roughly 2 months of the current financial year will be good in terms of buoyancy. Now coming to the future, means the next year, the buoyancy is, we expect it to be good, and with the revenue foregone, it will be of the range of 1.2 to 1.3. So which will be a very reasonable buoyancy for us to meet the targets.
Right.
Then the taxpayer base, what has been our experience has been that technology is giving us a good support. We have come out several new schemes, and we are utilizing technology in a way which we can be used to nudge the taxpayer to voluntarily come forward and file the return of income, or if in case he has submitted incorrect particulars, to come up and file a correct particular. So that way we are already moving, and it is giving us dividend. We are witnessing around 5% increase in the return of income, the taxpayers who file return of income every year.
5%?
Yes, around 5%. So that has been the experience, and with this our taxpayer base is also rising.
Okay.
Then if new measures have been taken to give a audit trail about the taxpayer in terms of the TDS provisions, and therefore we think that it is going to give us good traction. That has been the policy of the government for some time.
My final question, the last one for today, is to do with your own assessment of whether the glitches, certain issues that taxpayers had faced when it came to filing. Obviously, there is a volume, people come in, everybody wants to do it in the last 24 hours. So that all said, You yourself, your department has been putting a lot of attention on that. How robust is that system? Can you assure us that people will not face problems in the next filing cycle?
See, we witnessed difficulty in the year 2021 when we shifted to the new portal. A lot of difficulties were faced by the taxpayers, and we had to work again a lot to remove the glitches. In 2022, you would agree that we did not extend the date for filing of the return of income, and in spite of that, our filing process was smooth. Taxpayers could, like you have said, the record is 72 lakh returns were filed on a single day, and our team, which were supporting the taxpayers in terms of the redressal of their problems which they were facing in terms of, not in terms of uploading of data or putting the data in the portal, but how to do it and how better way they can do it, were also responded to in the most efficient manner. We believe that we would be able to have provide a still better environment to the taxpayers to file their return of income in the cycle of 2023.
Absolutely, and that's the whole point. You cannot avoid taxes, just like you cannot avoid death. But I'm not going to end on that somber note. I'll just end by saying, Mr. Gupta, thank you very much. All taxpayers look up to you, not just for reductions, but also for ease of filing, and I'm glad you have made that assurance. I thank you very much for your time with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for one of the key budget makers this time around. Thank you very much, Mr. Gupta.
Thank you, Siddharth, and thank you, Mr. Gupta. We'll begin the next panel in just a couple of moments. It's a power-packed panel with different representatives of industry to talk us through the kind of impact felt on various sectors post the budget this time round. Okay. Ready? All right, let me invite on stage my next set of guests. Parvesh Minocha, Chairman, Feedback Highways OMT. Patu Keswani, CMD, Lemon Tree Hotels. Navneet Muno, MD and CEO, HDFC Mutual Fund. Kunal Behel, CEO, Snapdeal. Rahul Garg, founder and CEO, Moglix. And Prashant Tripathi, MD and CEO, Max Life Insurance. In conversation with me, I'm Abha Bakaya, Senior Editor and Anchor at Business Today Television. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's great to have such a power-packed panel here to give us a perspective on all aspects of the budget this time around and its implications for industry. But let me start off with you, because there was, in fact, plenty of chatter around tourism this time. Do you feel the Finance Minister has actually listened to all the feedback, perhaps, that the industry gave her over the last couple of years?
Not really. I mean, they've reiterated that tourism is important, but I think this government is probably more focused on manufacturing right now as a source of employment. I live in hope, so maybe next year.
Okay. All right. Navneet, let me come to you in terms of, the market reaction and the kind of buzz we saw post-budget. Pre-budget, we heard that it was a non-event, but I think the fact that there were no negative surprises and the fact that she did actually give a boost to CAPEX positively surprised the street.
No, I think budget is for the Amrit Kal, next 25 years, so we should not evaluate based on the market reaction over the last couple of days. There are a variety of other variables that impact market. But I think looking at the budget, analyzing it, I will use 3 words: credible, continuity, and conviction. Credible in terms of budget math, continuity, whether in terms of enhancing the tax to GDP through simplification, digitalization, formalization of the economy, changing the expenditure more tilted towards capex rather than revenue, using the DBT to make the best of the revenue expenditure, particularly subsidies, ease of doing business, ease of living. All of that is like continuity. And conviction, I would say that when the world is going through so many challenges, having a conviction that over the next 25 years, India has a real opportunity of becoming a large, developed $20 trillion economy. An important part of that is not only a size of the economy or the per capita GDP increase, but also can we create an example of becoming one of the most sustainable, equitable, inclusive society. I think that's where I would say the conviction. So full marks.
Kunal, let me come to you and your overall views on the budget this time.
Yeah, I think I'm usually asked about what do startups think about the budget. So I'll, I actually feel whenever I'm asked this question about what is the startups' view on the budget, I always say, look, we have to revisit our assessment of the terminology of startups, because the budget caters to all sectors of the economy, as do startups. So from whether it's infrastructure, financial services, fintech, or education, manufacturing, hospitality, startups transcend all these sectors. So I feel that in this budget, obviously they were conservative, given the market conditions globally, but at the same time, there's enough for growth also across sectors, whether it's agri-tech, manufacturing obviously got a lot of focus. So overall, I would say it was from the startup lens, it was all very positive.
Okay, so talking about growth, let me go back across to Parvesh and get a sense, because it's really your sector that saw the biggest boost. Were you happy with the budget this time around?
I think a lot of positives, a lot of capex allocation, long-term, lot of projects are being shown. But I think the bigger things which to my mind is, I think the momentum of the last few years has been picked up. More has been added, and I think it actually bodes well for the future years, because I think they're going to add more and more money. So I think we are in a very, very good period as far as the infrastructure is concerned, whether it's renewables, whether it's rail, whether it's road, whether it's airports. There was a lot of it, and particularly green energy. So a lot about environment has been said. I only have a couple of small, if I have to figure out I have to say something which is not that great. I don't know why they had to touch the InvITs. They touched the InvITs, which I don't know why they had to touch the insurance. And I'm not sure the capex which has been allocated, there is a ready absorption capacity of that much of capex. So actually it's a bit of an over allocation of capex, but the enthusiasm is very nice.
That's an interesting point, and I'll come back to that. But Prashant, I heard you nodding on the piece on insurance. I think the market was wondering that too. Why touch it?
Yeah, it came as a negative surprise to all of us, because we were representing that insurance should have better carve-outs as far as tax is concerned. Over the years, we have seen that the use or usage of ATC has been going down for insurance, and that number has been flat for many years. But 1010D is something which is quite relevant, which means you get all your proceeds tax-free if you have bought a policy which has 10 times the sum assured. This time, there is a cap of up to 5 lakhs on traditional policies. It came in ULIP a couple of years ago for more than 250,000. This time, it was more than 5 lakhs. And that is something which has, evoked a negative reaction from the industry, from share market. All the listed stocks are down anywhere between 10 to 15%. While on one side there's a market reaction, but on the other side, I think insurance as a vehicle is one of the most trusted vehicles as far as savings in India is concerned. And because of our long-term nature, etc., all of us serve a lot to retired customers. So people who are buying, typically buying more than 5 lakhs policies are trying to save for their retirement period. And hence a recommendation of this kind definitely has a bigger impact, which we are trying to see how to mitigate. At the same time, I think the government intent actually to tax wealthy people is quite well understood. But somebody who is able to afford 5 lakhs may not necessarily be wealthy. I mean, people who are earning more than around 30, 40 lakhs are not really particularly wealthy people. So our view is that that benefit should have continued. If we had to tax, maybe we could tax more than 10 lakhs, not 5 lakhs. Of course, as an industry, we'll represent and see which way it goes, but definitely a negative reaction.
All right. Rahul, coming to you. And I want to get your perspective on the entire angel tax issue, because that's much talked about in the startup ecosystem. There was a sense that perhaps if that could have been eased out, it might have been a little bit more of a fillip to the sector.
No, so the way I look at it, for startups, there are two things which are very important, right? Access to more money, and angels play a very important role in it. And over the last few years, we have talked about how do we get access to more domestic capital. And the second thing which I would also want to expand the question, which is on ESOP taxation at the point of exercise. So I think these two things, remain a recurring ask for last several years. We continue to hope that it will come in the budget hopefully very soon, or maybe as a separate topic, because these are two fundamental things of how do you create value for employees and investors, and how do you attract more and more people coming into the sector. However, I would say that I continue to remain excited about the fact that just few years back, startup was not part of the budget conversation. So the fact that startups are talked about in the budget conversation, the country is continuing to think about how can we have more startups, not just facilitated by the central actions, but also by states encouraging startups to come in, is a positive direction that I would believe.
She definitely did mention the word several times. Kunal, and also talked about, pockets, like you mentioned, fintech, and driving action in those segments in particular. Do you feel that perhaps the startup ecosystem would have wanted more of a fillip, or that just the fact that they're being recognized as such is a good start?
I think we are past the point of, while I agree with Rahul completely, when I started 15 years ago, startup was not even part of the parlance in India, where it was like either you got a job or you maybe started a company. What is this startup thing? But obviously now it's part of national parlance, and the smartest kids out of the best colleges want to start up, and they already start up when they are in college, compared to something which is, it's like something you would irregularly see in the world. I do feel that, while this recognition is great, we are past that point as an ecosystem now. I think we feel abundantly recognized. I think at this point in time, we are now part of the conversation in various industries, right? If agriculture is having a conversation about how to move that industry forward, startups are part of the table, where they are saying, here's how we are using technology to bridge the gap between demand and supply and make things more efficient. Same in financial services, same in manufacturing, so on and so forth. One area where I do think, which has been a constant ask from our industry, which impacts employees, investors, sentiment, flow of domestic capital into startups, is the equalization of the long-term capital gains tax on unlisted equities to listed equities. And today there is actually a benefit. If you invest as an overseas investor in an Indian company, you get a lower tax rate when you sell your shares in a startup versus if I invest in a company as an Indian resident in the same startup, which sounds a bit, inconsistent with what we would want to do as a country, where we would want to have the same level of tax so that there is no disincentive for domestic investors to invest in startups, which today, unfortunately, is the case.
Okay. All right, let me come back to the startup segment. But Patu, let me bring you in here. And while you said that perhaps she hasn't yet heard the industry's call, we've been seeing a fantastic set of numbers coming in across the board when it comes to tourism, hospitality. Right now, the economy is looking good. Do you expect that optimism to remain? Any sort of uncertainty or gray skies on the horizon? Or are you also confident, given what the finance minister also outlined and the kind of boost she's delivered in the budget, that things will remain on track?
See, our industry is in the discretionary sector, and I feel that other than some new black swan event, I see the next 4 to 5 years for the hotel industry as just an upswing. So, in this industry, in fact, in the tourism industry, I just see positive waves going forward. In the hotel industry, what I find interesting is that, for those of, I guess nobody is in the hotel industry except me. You make, in 10 years, you make 80%, it's Pareto, 80% of your profit in 2 years, which is the top of the cycle. So it's a bit like a commodity cycle. And that's come finally after 14 years, okay? So what I see happening is that every hotel company in India, so there's a saying, at the top of the cycle, gadhas and ghodas run at the same pace. So here, everybody will run. Of course, there will be differences, but my view is the next 3 years, and perhaps 4, till supply comes in, you are going to have a period where every hotel company in India is going to make a crazy amount of money.
Fantastic. And where do you see the growth coming from in terms of segments, or would it be across the board?
So here's the interesting thing. I find that, nobody in his right mind wants corporates as your customers because they buy large amounts of inventory and give you very low rate business. So what you really want is retail. One is it protects your brand, expands your brand, and it's very difficult to shift a retail customer, whereas a corporate can say tomorrow we've signed, a contract with somebody else. What's growing very fast? So if I break this sector, where does growth for the hotel industry come? It comes from the services sector. So if the GDP grows at 5%, but the services sector grows at 10%, and within that, say technology, financial services, and so on are growing at 12 or 15, the hotel industry grows at 1.5 times the services sector, okay? And now supply is going to grow at roughly 3 to 4% for the next 5 years. You can project that because supply takes 5 years to get ready. So what I see happening is there's a 15% demand growth, a 3% supply growth, 5% supply growth, and for every 2% difference in favor of demand, it's like the oil industry. A 1% increase in demand is a 10% increase in price. So if I project 1.5 years from now, the average cost of a hotel room will be double of what it is today. Wow. Okay, and that's operating leverage because there's no increase in cost. You'll see it from Q3, Q4 as companies report.
Okay, so I guess my next question then would be, Navneet, do you see spending power? Do you see that demand? Do you see all the factors in place for that kind of demand to match what Patu's saying?
Very clearly, I think over the last several years, we have seen a majorly consumption-led growth, but 1/3 of the economy, which is investment, and that you split between government capex, corporate capex, and household capex. Within that, government is surely leading from the front. The corporate capex, I think looking at the cleanup of the balance sheets over the last couple of years, now banking sector's balance sheet is in a great shape to lend money, and with capacity utilization increasing and the other opportunities coming from in a geopolitically realigning, in a demographically diverging, and a digitally redesigning, in a decarbonizing and a deleveraging world. India is clearly an oasis of hope, and I'm sure we are going to see that. Household capex has been increasing, particularly on the real estate side. Maybe higher rates may dent some bit of it, but otherwise structurally I think we are moving in the right direction. When that happens, you have a more sustained increase in consumption. Because when investment cycle kicks in, you have new jobs getting created, incomes rising, people consume more, people save more. When people save more, it goes into investment, which in turn creates more capacity and more jobs. So I think we are likely to enter into that virtuous cycle after a very long time.
Okay, so let me ask you, Prashant, talking about savings, because there was also debate, it was playing out earlier, on one of the other panels and post-budget otherwise, in terms of whether or not this is going to result in less of a savings economy, or will it be savings of a different kind as the economy moves to different instruments?
I think from the vantage point of life insurance, where we see a lot of savings come through, I think post-demonetization, we saw formalization, which led to savings flow through to companies like us, of course, to mutual funds. And I can see across all financial services cohorts a steady increase in savings inflows. For example, COVID was a very difficult year, but our industry didn't stop. Actually, year on year, we have seen savings of or inflows, new premium of about 15 to 20% growth, which is one of the very robust growths that I've seen in over a very long period of time. So my sense is that as wealth permeates, people will spend, and I think people will continue to save also. And I think that means an overall growth for all the sectors of economy. From our perspective, I think life insurance as a category holds license to be in several zones. And you must have read quite a lot about life insurance over the last couple of quarters. We have a new chairman who is very visionary. He has a vision of where life insurance industry should be in by 2047, which is 100 years of independence. And I think across not just savings, plain savings, but retirement saving, pure protection, reaching out to tier 2, tier 3 and village levels, I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen. And I think all that is definitely good news. And personally speaking, I feel very optimistic about which way savings in general and life insurance in particular is headed.
So a lot of this hinges on the capex push and the supply side measures that she's talked about. Pravesh, you talked about the absorption being perhaps a challenge. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think before I go there, couple of other things I just want to add. What I find very redeeming is this long-term loan to states. 50-year loans, interest-free or low interest rate, because whatever development was to happen, which is led by the central government, were happening very well. States were not really picking up the wake what they're supposed to. They're supposed to be 50-50. It was becoming actually like almost 1:2.5. With this coming in, if the state come to the party, I think that will happen. There's one thing. Other one is